On the morning of February 14, 2000, before most people in Shelby, North Carolina had even turned on a light, a 9-year-old girl was already gone. There was no broken window. No sign of a struggle. No scream in the night that woke the neighborhood. Just a child who had been in her bed, and then wasn't. Hours later, witnesses would say they had seen a small figure walking alone along Highway 18 in the darkness before dawn. One driver thought it was strange enough to turn around. But by the time he came back, the child had disappeared from the roadside and into the woods. That child, investigators believe, was Asha Degree. More than a year later, her backpack would be found buried miles away. Inside were items that did not belong to her. Years later, investigators would release a possible vehicle clue. The FBI would continue to receive tips from across the country. Her family would never stop hoping. And her case would become one of the most haunting missing child mysteries in modern American true crime. This is the story of Asha Degree, the child who walked into the dark and never came home. Shelby, North Carolina was not the kind of place where parents expected a child to vanish into mystery. It was the kind of town where families knew the roads, the schools, the churches, and the rhythms of daily life. That familiarity is one reason this case hits so hard. When a child disappears from a place that feels ordinary and knowable, the fear cuts deeper. It tells everyone around them that ordinary life may not be as safe as it seems. Asha Degree was 9 years old when she disappeared. According to official case information, she was last seen by her family asleep in bed at about 2:30 in the morning on February 14, 2000. The North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation describes her as a black female. 4 feet 6 inches tall, around 60 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. She was just a 4th grader, a child young enough that every official description of the case still feels jarring. The FBI later described Asha as shy, but also spirited and intelligent. She was not presented as a reckless drifter or a habitual runaway. She was a child with a family, a school, routines, and a place in a close-knit community. That matters, because one of the reasons her disappearance has remained so gripping is that it does not fit neatly into the assumptions people make about how children vanish. Her family's pain has been public for decades. But so has their hope. In FBI and local interviews, Asha's mother, Aquila Degree, has continued to say she believes someone knows something. She has also continued, over the years, to hold on to the possibility that her daughter might still be found. That combination, heartbreak mixed with hope, gives the case a rare emotional force. It is not simply a whodunit. It is a story about absence that never stopped feeling present. The timeline of Asha Degree's disappearance has been examined for years. Partly because the early hours are so important and partly because the known facts are surprisingly narrow. What is certain, according to the FBI and the SBI, is that Asha was seen sleeping in her bed by her family at around 2:30 a.m. Then, sometime before 6:30 a.m., she was gone. That gap, just a few hours, is where the mystery begins to grow. No forced entry was reported. Search dogs did not produce a promising scent trail. There was no immediate physical sign that someone had broken in and taken her. Instead, the case developed around a deeply unsettling possibility. That Asha may have left trained searchers combed the surrounding area in a grid-style effort. They searched miles along Highway 18, trying to find anything: footprints, fabric, wrappers, disturbed ground. Any sign that would tell them where Asha had gone or who had taken her. The image is haunting, a line of searchers, each spaced apart, sweeping rural ground with the hope that a detail the size of a thread could open the entire case. It is a reminder that in the earliest phase of a disappearance, investigators are not yet trying to solve a mystery. They are trying to stop it from becoming one. But in Asha's case, that is exactly what happened. The search did not bring her home in hours. It did not bring her home in days. And as the hours stretched into a week, the town was forced to accept a terrifying reality. A little girl had disappeared with almost no trace. One of the most important developments in the case came the same day investigators were trying to understand the timeline. According to the FBI, by that afternoon, at least 2 separate reports had come in from individuals who said they saw a young female walking along Highway 18 at around 4 a.m., moving in the opposite direction from the Degree home. That was a game-changing detail. It suggested that Asha had not vanished from within the house. She had been outside. She had been moving. She had been physically present on a dark roadway before dawn, alone, vulnerable, and visible enough that passing motorists noticed her. One witness said he turned around to check on the girl because it seemed so unusual. But by the time he came back, she had left the roadway and disappeared into the woods. That single moment has stayed in the public imagination for years. It sounds like the point in a film where the ending might still be changed, where one small decision, 1 minute earlier, one more successful attempt to reach a frightened child, might have altered everything. Investigators later described this as the last confirmed sighting of Asha. And that phrase, last confirmed sighting, carries enormous weight in a case like this. It becomes the edge of the known world. Everything before it can be built from facts. Everything after it becomes inference, theory, and hope. The North Carolina SBI's summary states that Asha was last seen by motorists walking along Highway 18 in Shelby at 4 a.m. It also lists what she was believed to be wearing: a white shirt, white jeans, white tennis shoes, and possibly carrying her black Tweety Bird purse and a black backpack. That simple wardrobe description has become one of the enduring visual anchors of the case. The image of a small child in light clothing moving through darkness, almost ghost-like on the roadside. There are some missing person cases where the broad outline makes immediate sense, even if the perpetrator is unknown. A person is kidnapped from a parking lot. A jogger disappears on a trail. A teenager vanishes after a party. But Asha Degree's disappearance resists that kind of pattern recognition. Here, the victim was 9 years old. She left in the pre-dawn darkness. She was seen alone. And she appeared to be moving with purpose. As if she believed she was going somewhere important. That combination creates a very different kind of mystery. It forces you to ask not only who harmed her, but what influenced her before that moment. Did she intend to meet someone? Was she trying to reach a destination that made sense only to her? Was she lured beforehand? Or did some opportunity arise only after she was already outside and exposed? Investigators have never publicly resolved that central question. What remains is the image of a child acting in a way that seems impossible to explain from the outside. And that image has kept the case alive in the public mind for decades because it feels fully give up. That is one of the most devastating truths in unresolved disappearance cases. Certainty may hurt, but uncertainty can become a permanent condition. If the roadside sightings were the moment the mystery expanded, the discovery of Asha's backpack was the moment it deepened. According to the FBI, on August 3, 2001, more than a year after her disappearance, construction workers in Burke County, about 30 miles north of the last sighting, discovered a book bag that belonged to Asha while digging an access road for a new home. That location alone was enough to reshape the case. The backpack was far from where she had last been seen, suggesting movement, concealment, and the involvement of another person. Inside the backpack were items that made the case even stranger: a new Kids on the Block concert t-shirt and a Dr. Seuss book called McElligot's Pool. According to the FBI, neither item belonged to Asha, though the book had come from the library at her school, Falston Elementary. These were not random discoveries, they were clues that implied contact with environments, people, or movements beyond the known timeline of her disappearance. The presence of those items raises difficult questions. Why was a children's library book from her school in the bag? Why was a concert t-shirt that was not hers inside with it? Were the items planted? Were they mixed with her belongings at some point before or after she disappeared? Did they connect to a location, a person, or a chain of custody that investigators still have not publicly explained? The backpack answered one thing, that Asha's belongings had traveled far from the last confirmed sighting, but it multiplied the number of mysteries attached to the case. WSOC reported that investigators believe someone took Asha, and the backpack discovery is a major reason why that belief hardened over time. A child does not typically transport a backpack that distance, conceal it, and erase every other trace without help or force from another party. The backpack is not only evidence. It is the physical proof that this case stretches beyond the simple image of a child walking alone on a road. One reason the backpack evidence remains so compelling is that it introduced foreign objects into an already baffling case. In a disappearance where so little is known for certain, anything that does not fit becomes magnified. The t-shirt and the book became exactly that, objects with no simple explanation. Investigators publicly released images of the shirt and the book years later, in 2018, hoping someone would recognize them or remember something that had seemed unimportant at the time. That decision says a lot about the case. It means investigators still believe those items could be key. In many long unsolved investigations, evidence is not just about what it proves scientifically. It is also about what it might trigger in someone's memory. A shirt can remind someone of a relative. A library book can remind someone of a child's room. A bag found in a buried state can remind someone of a story they heard once and never reported. These are the strange mechanics of cold case work. The evidence does not always speak directly. Sometimes it waits for a human memory to connect the dots. For documentary storytelling, this is one of the strongest emotional and visual parts of the case. Because the backpack is the last undeniable physical connection between Asha and the unknown. It is not a rumor. It is not a theory. It is a recovered object that traveled farther than she should have, carrying clues that still feel suspended between accident and intention. Years after Asha disappeared, investigators publicly revealed another possible lead that changed the shape of public discussion. According to the FBI, a 2015 reinvestigation turned up a possibility that Asha may have been seen getting into a dark green 1970s model Lincoln Continental Mark IV or a Ford Thunderbird with rust around the wheel wells. The FBI announced this potential lead in 2016 and released images of those types of vehicles. That clue matters because it introduces a possible transition point between the known and the unknown. Up to that point, the accepted facts centered on Asha leaving home and being seen walking on Highway 18. A vehicle suggests a moment when the case shifted from a child walking alone to a child potentially entering the control of another person. But it is important to frame this carefully. Investigators described it as a possible lead. It does not, by itself, solve the case. It does not tell us who was driving, whether the child entered willingly, whether she was forced, or whether the sighting can be fully reconstructed. What it does tell us is that authorities found the lead credible enough to release it publicly and ask the public for help. This is where responsible true crime storytelling matters. It is easy to turn a vehicle lead into a dramatic certainty, but doing that would overstate the facts. The more honest and more compelling approach is this: if Asha entered such a vehicle, that may have been the moment she crossed beyond the reach of every searcher, witness, and family member trying to bring her home. The tragedy becomes stronger, not weaker, when it remains tied to what is actually known. Officially, Asha Degree's case has remained open for decades. But in practice, it also remained active in another sense: it continued evolving. Investigators revisited files. The FBI consolidated older records into searchable formats. Fresh reviews were conducted. Tips kept coming in from around the country. The case persisted not because time stood still, but because people kept refusing to let the trail end. The FBI noted that in 2015 the Sheriff's Office joined with the Bureau and the North Carolina SBI in a top-to-bottom re-examination of the case. More than 350 leads were generated, including dozens in a single recent year referenced by the Bureau. In a separate FBI transcript page, officials also described how federal resources helped. When you narrate this portion, it should not sound like performance. It should sound like restraint. Because this is the point where your documentary stops being just about clues and starts being about what unsolved absence does to a family over decades. A case like Asha Degree survives in public partly because police continue investigating and partly because the public itself becomes an archive of unresolved memory. Every new age progression, every anniversary article, every reward update, every new billboard is really an attempt to keep the case from slipping out of collective awareness. The FBI has worked with the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children to produce multiple age-progressed images of Asha over the years, imagining how she might look as an adult. These images serve two purposes at once. First, they are investigative tools. Second, they are emotional bridges. They refuse to leave the victim frozen at age 9. Instead, they insist on the life that should have unfolded. That is one of the most heartbreaking dynamics in long-term missing child cases. The public remembers the child as a child. But the family has had to imagine birthdays, adulthood, maybe even a middle-aged life they never witnessed. The age-progressed face becomes a portrait of time itself, not just who the child might be now, but how much of life has already passed without answers. And still, investigators keep asking for the same thing: memory. A person who noticed a car. A person who recognized a shirt. A person who once heard a story that didn't make sense until years later. Cold cases are sometimes solved not because evidence changes, but because a human being finally understands that what they know matters. In more recent reporting, local news outlets have described major investigative activity connected to Asha's case. WCNC reported that search warrant documentation described Asha as a victim of homicide whose body was concealed, and that investigators recovered a car similar in make and model to one previously sought in the case. The same reporting emphasized that this information came from court documents and that, at the time of the report cited here, the matter remained part of an ongoing investigation. For your documentary, the safest and strongest way to use this information is careful attribution. Do not turn a reported investigative theory into a final resolved conclusion beyond what authorities have publicly said. Say that recent court documents reported by local media indicated investigators were pursuing new evidence and treating the case with renewed urgency. That keeps the narration accurate and avoids overstating unresolved allegations. The emotional point is not that the case is solved. It is that after all these years, law enforcement still appears to believe meaningful answers are reachable. That changes how a viewer experiences the story. It means the mystery is not only historical. It is active. The truth may still be moving toward the surface. There are thousands of unsolved cases in America. Only a small number become part of national true crime memory. Asha Degree's case endures because it combines almost every element that unsettles the public at the deepest level. A child. A quiet home. A strange departure. A dark road. Witnesses who saw her. A backpack buried miles away. A possible vehicle. A family still waiting. Every part of it feels like it should produce an answer. That may be the most haunting thing of all. Usually, when a case contains this many memorable pieces, one of them breaks it open. Someone recognizes the object. Someone connects the car. Someone tells police what they have been hiding. But here, the pieces have remained visible for years without fully locking together. That is why good documentary treatment of this case should not rely on exaggeration. The truth is already powerful. The real facts are more disturbing than any invented drama because they leave the viewer with a feeling that refuses to settle, the sense that the answer may be close, that it may even have been close for years, and that the hardest part of the case may not be the lack of clues, but the silence around them. On paper, the case of Asha Degree can be reduced to a timeline. A 9-year-old girl went missing from Shelby, North Carolina on February 14, 2000. She was last seen by motorists walking along Highway 18 around 4 a.m. Her backpack was found in Burke County more than a year later. Investigators have pursued leads for decades. The case remains open. But no family lives inside a timeline. They live inside the unanswered moments between those facts. The last time they saw her asleep. The first time they realized she was gone. The years of birthdays without explanation. The interviews. The anniversaries. The age-progressed images. The prayers. The hope. Asha Degree has been called Shelby's sweetheart, and maybe that phrase has lasted because it captures something larger than affection. It captures responsibility. A town remembers her. Investigators remember her. The country remembers her. And somewhere inside that long memory is the possibility that somebody has held the final piece of the truth for years. If this case is ever solved, the answer may come from science, or evidence, or a witness, or a memory that finally becomes too heavy to keep. But until then, the image remains the same, a child moving through darkness before dawn, leaving behind one of the most enduring mysteries in modern America. Asha Degree was only 9 years old. And after all these years, the question still remains. What happened to her? If you value respectful true crime documentaries built around real cases and verified reporting, subscribe, and if one detail in Asha's case stays with you, tell me in the comments which clue you think matters most.